Church, how we doing? Let's go, let's go, let's go. I love coffee. Anybody love coffee? It's like when you start drinking coffee, I feel like it's an acquired taste. You drink it for the way it makes you feel, like initially, kind of wakes you up. And so I've kind of graduated from that since coming to Waco, because there's some amazing coffee shops here in Waco. Incredible coffee shop, true story. The coffee scene in Waco rivals Seattle. Hot take, my opinion. And so I've kind of got into the whole beans. You know, I got the grinder, and then I've got the brewer with the grinder attached. And so I've switched to whole bean coffee. I'm drinking for taste these days. And I have several meetings in my house 3 times a week. And so let's see, I've got a discipleship group Tuesday morning, elders Wednesday morning, life group guys Thursday morning. And so brew 3 cups of coffee, 3 pots of coffee a week, right? And I know I'm at a birthday party Wednesday night. I realize I'm out of coffee. Okay, I'm out of coffee beans. And it's like 10:45, and I'm driving back kind of through some of the small towns around here, and I'm with my buddy John, and I'm like, I've got to stop and get coffee beans. Like, where, go into one of these little general stores, if you will. Coffee bean, I don't know, I don't think so. I'm kind of walking around, I found a bag of whole bean coffee, right? Amazing. Take it up, I'm like, hey, I want to buy this. He's struggling to find it in the system, which is odd, but whatever. Get it, purchase it, go home. And I'm pouring it into the grinder on top of the coffee maker. I started looking at the bag, I'm like, what kind of coffee, man, okay, cool. Flip it over, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I think it may be a picture of the Best Buy date there. It was best, 3 years ago. And I went for it, and it didn't sit well. It wasn't good. I kind of was burping up some bad coffee all day long. Not just me though, my life group was in it with me. It's all good. It's all good. Here's why I say that is not everything gets better with age, okay? Not everything gets better with age. And interestingly enough, with humans, it can go one way or the other, okay? With humans, it can go one way or the other. And you're kind of in this place where you're like, hey, how you doing? Don't think of somebody else right now, like, oh yeah, they're not aging. No, how are you doing? And in fact, we've been reading a book together as a body, many of us, and John Mark Comer says this in Practicing the Way. Elderly people over the age of 80 are either the best people or the worst people you know. They are either the most gracious, happy, grateful, patient, loving, self-giving people you know, just happy to be alive, sitting in the room with you, or the most bitter, manipulative, spiteful people you know, oozing emotional poison into their family lines and reveling in others' pain. There might be some in the middle, but most lean one way or the other. His point is we're all becoming something. Amazing name for a podcast. We're all becoming something. I'm not being ageist. Certainly this resonates with you. You realize, like, wait, how am I maturing? And specifically, if we talk about maturing in the faith, listen, there are pastors who, for a living, they study the Word of God and they teach it, and then they make some really immature decisions. Catastrophic, tragic decisions. How does that happen? Because you won't naturally drift towards holiness and godliness. There has to be something in there that the Holy Spirit is doing in and through us to make us more mature. And that is, I'll tell you what I think happens. kind of being on the inside of that group, is I think you separate yourself from the body. You think, oh, I can't really let them in on what I'm struggling with and what I'm going through. And as you drift away, people stop speaking the truth in love to you, and you stop growing. And you can do that at an individual level. How you doing? If I brought you up here, if I brought you on stage right now, and I said, hey, let's make some observations about this person. How old are they? I bet we could guess with, like we're at the fair, the midway, if you will. We may be able to get within 5 years. Are they strong? We could begin to make some observations about your style. But if I said, how spiritually mature are they? Someone who doesn't know you could not answer that because your age is not going to tell them. The way that you physically present is not going to tell them. How spiritually mature are you? Listen to this. I read this quote this week. Someone said, I've been a Christian for 22 years, but I'm not a 22-year-old Christian. No, I've been a 1-year-old Christian 22 times. And I thought, man, that's the problem we're dealing with. I think that's a lot of our stories. As we came into the faith, we are now in Christ, and we think, all right, got my fire insurance, I'm getting in, I can tell people about Jesus, and we've forsaken all of these verses to say, no. You are to get some people around you to speak the truth and love to you so that you would grow strong and mature. Be committed to a body of church. I talk about it all the time, like church is not a hobby. I don't care where you grew up or what you taught, church is not a hobby. This is this thing that you go to and you commit to and you belong to, and your gifts are deployed here. And that's the only way. And there's no exception. There's no one, it's not a spectator sport. It's not something you come here to watch. And so I want to talk about what makes a mature Christian. If we can't observe it from the outside, how can we tell if someone is a mature Christian? The text is going to tell us so clear, and then it's going to bring all of these ideas together to say, okay, the mature Christian makes up the mature, unified church. You're going to see a pattern in this text. It's 16 verses. I really wanted to break it up, into multiple weeks, but it's one complete thought. So I think we've got to go through all 16 because the flow is unity, maturity, maturity, unity, unity, maturity, okay? I'll just read you some scriptures from here. In verse 3, it says, make every effort to keep the unity. Verse 12, so that the body of Christ may be built up. Verse 13, until we all reach unity and become mature. Verse 14, then we will no longer be infants. Verse 15, we will grow to become in every aspect the mature body. This is the rhythm. Unity, maturity, maturity, unity. This is what we're seeing here. Now listen, as way of review, we've gone through the first 3 chapters. We're starting today in Ephesians chapter 4. If you're just joining us for the first time, we're going verse by verse through the book of Ephesians. You can turn there in the New Testament through the Gospels, 1 Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, before Colossians. Gone through the first 3 chapters. Here's what's interesting about the first 3 chapters. Not one imperative command. One time he says, remember. He goes, hey, I want you to remember. I want you to reflect on. He gives no instruction the first 3 chapters. He's going to turn into chapter 4, and he's like, are you ready? What he does in chapter 3, this is who you are in Christ. This is who you are in Christ. This is who you are in Christ. This is what Christ did for you. This is what God has done for you. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. It is not of yourself, it's the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God has prepared in advance for us to do, but he never asks us to do them, not one time in 3 chapters. And then verse 4 happens. He says, you ready? Now that you know who you are in Christ, I've got some instructions for you. And so as we move through this section, verses 1 through 16, we're going to look at the disposition, the deployment, and the development of the mature Christian. We'll start here in verse 1. Paul wrote this in prison in Rome to the most powerful church in the world at the time. church in Ephesus. As a prisoner for the Lord then, so he was reminding you, he's in prison still. The then there, it's better, in the NIV it's then. In the other versions it's therefore. I think therefore is a more appropriate translation, not because he's in prison, but because of the first 3 chapters. Because this is who you are in Christ, therefore, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Where it says worthy, that word in the Greek is of equal weight, that your calling and your conduct should live in balance, that what God has called you to should flow out of your life in the things that you do and the ways that you interact with other people. He says, this is how, what should that look like, Paul? Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Interesting, he doesn't say, hey, create unity. No, unity is given to you by the Holy Spirit. Your job is to guard it, protect it, to keep it. Okay, yield it to the Holy Spirit. You keep the unity. There is one body and one Spirit. Just as you were called to one hope when you were called, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Here in this doxological statement, you have the Trinity. He's saying, hey, you have this expression of unity, and his main idea is right there out the gate. There is one body held together by one Spirit. And then he's reminding you, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father over all, who is in all, and the Holy Spirit is working together. In fact, he starts with the Spirit because he's coming out of that line, keeping the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. And so my first point is a mature Christian's disposition. Disposition is like attitude. What are the virtues that flow out of a mature Christian? How can you see? What would you observe? Humility, gentleness, and patience. And when expressed through the believer, this preserves the unity of the Spirit and the peace bond that marks the body of Christ. And that makes sense to us, right? If you're humble, if you're patient, if you're gentle, unity is going to follow you. You're going to be marked by that reality. It's making another observation I want to bring your attention to, that you have the Trinity. If you're more comfortable with saying you have access to the Trinity, so be it. But he's really saying the Trinity is with you, working through you. And your job is to consciously yield to that God. You do the work that you want to do through my life, God. Here I am. That however much you have left, I don't know what your expiration date is. So I don't know if you've got 5 years or 50 years. But I know that every single day there's a surrendering to the Trinity to say, God, what is it that you want to do through me? And we love when a Christian is marked by these virtues: humility, patience, and gentleness. I think about a lot of people. I think about my friend and pastor in the city, John Durham. I meet that guy, I'm like, why is there anybody here? I'm like, they don't need their address. Like, he just exudes the fruit of the Spirit. And I meet people and I'm like, I want whatever is in you, I want more of that in me, right? And surely you can think of someone. Who do you know that's marked by humility, gentleness, patience? And here's a question. How many people just thought about you? You know what I mean? I know. They're over there. Humility, gentleness, patience, that marks them. All of these things come from what he's saying. And you don't have to be overwhelmed, because he's saying, hey, all of this comes from being in the presence of God. We had that solar eclipse this past week. Anybody see it? Sure you did. Well, I mean, a few things stood out to me. Like one is like any glimmer of that sun, just, it's light, you know? I mean, it was just like, it's daylight, 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 dark. I mean, it was like the whole sun, daylight, little bit of half sun, still daylight, tiny little sliver of sun, still daylight, right? I mean, that thing is powerful. I walked away from it and I'm like, I did something wrong to my eyes. I mean, I had the glasses and everything. Anybody else feel that? I was like, man, something is not right with my eyes. Sun is so powerful. You sit in the sun long enough and people are going to see it physically on you. It's going to change you. It's going to impact what you look like. And this is what the Holy Spirit through Paul is saying. Hey, if you don't have gentleness, patience, if these things are coming from your life, go and sit with God, right? That's the solution. It's not to leave here and try to be more humble. No, it's to sit in the presence of God because the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Those things flow out of our lives, right? I am not naturally humble. I am not naturally gentle, and I am not naturally patient. And in fact, operating in the flesh, 3 very fair criticisms of me are you are prideful, overbearing, and impatient. Not in the spirit. Every single day of my life, I have to wake up. I go to this green chair in the front of our house, and I sit there. And I grab a journal and I write down 5 things that I'm thankful for. And it takes longer than you think it would. And I sit there till the 5 things come to me. And I take my time. And I'm just talking to God and I'm thanking Him as I write those things down. And then I grab the Word. I hate to read, especially old things. But I grab the Word and I turn to a chapter and I read it. And I read it, and I just anything that I can observe there, anything that's jumping out at me, right? And I just reflect on it. And then I grab my prayer cards, and I flip through them slowly, and I pray for you, and I pray for our elders, and I pray for my family. I pray for each of my kids by names. I pray for their friends. And I just start flipping through those prayer cards, trying not to be hurried, because that's me sitting in the presence of the Son. And if you encounter me in a day where that didn't happen, because it doesn't always, it happens most times, but there's days where it's like, I'm late to this meeting, for whatever reason, meeting's too early. I'm thinking, hey, I'll do that later. I'll do that before I go to bed. And I go to that meeting. You encounter me, there's gonna be a lack of patience on that day, a lack of humility. And I'm just telling you, there's no shortcuts. That's what I've learned. At 43, there's no other way. I can't fake it. It's like I can sit in the presence of God or not, but you're gonna see it on my life. A mature Christian's disposition of humility, gentleness, and patience leads to a unified church. A strong, mature, unified church. Verse 7. But to each one of us, grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. That's not saving grace. That's not the grace that we receive faith from. That's a gift that God gives you to be deployed in His church. This is why it says, He says, when He ascended on high, He took many captives and gave gifts to His people. Okay, this is a paraphrase of Psalm 68. Some believe Psalm 68, verse 18 specifically. I think it's the whole psalm. The psalm is about a commander-in-chief a military leader who goes into a land and conquers the land and gathers the gifts and then gives the gifts, distributes the gifts to the soldiers. Says here, this is for you for use. This is for you to use. This is for you to use. This is for you to use. Jesus came to the earth, conquered sin and death and Satan, and then gives us gifts to be used in His church. Guys, at some point, you're all looking at me, and at some point, this has to move from ethereal to right here. Like you got, it has to be like, boom, I'm waiting for that light bulb. I'm like, oh, I have gifts that God gave me to be used in his church. Oh, and if I'm not doing that, then I'm not living the life that God desires for me to live. Oh, and it's that simple. It's not more complex than that. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Parenthetically, he says, what does he ascended mean except that he also descended to the lower earthly regions? He who descended is the very one who ascended higher than all the heavens in order to fill the whole universe. Complicated verse there. We could spend days on it, lots of different views. Talking about Christ descending, some views, Christ came to the earth, that's the descending. Some views, Christ went into hell to preach the gospel to those who are imprisoned. There's other verses that point to that's another view. Here in Ephesians, all I think he's saying is he went into the grave. He's just giving commentary on the word ascended. Hey, he went to the grave, he died, and then he ascended to be with the Father forever and ever, showing you that he has the power to conquer sin, death, and Satan. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors and teachers. The pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service, underline service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. There's role players in the church, vocational pastors, prophets, teachers, evangelists, salaried or on payroll, if you will. It's what they do for a living. And their job is to raise up pastors, ministers of the gospel, people who are deploying their gifts in the church, that they would give you assignments and tools, right? They're like the coaches, right? We don't just do ministry to people, but we do ministry through people. They're coming alongside all of you. They have some connection to all of you. If you're here, you're a member, you're in a life group. They've got a lifeline to you, and they're trying to help you understand, hey, this is how God made you. These are the gifts that you have to be deployed in the body, okay? They're coaching you. They're saying, hey, you're my people. I'm committed to you. Right? Let's go. My second point is a mature Christian's deployment. Think about that word, deployment, like a military term. Hey, you're enlisting, you're going to boot camp, you're learning the skills, you're being trained up, and then you're going to war. And you're pushing back darkness. I know this is like soapbox for me. Why don't we do that? I mean, when did church become a spectator sport? It's like, no, just like you, like Jesus is on the cross. Man, I really hope they go there and watch one day. That is my biggest desire for that they would put on their best. They'd look really good, like they could take pictures in bluebonnets afterwards, you know, grab some Tex-Mex. And I just hope they go and they watch. That's why I'm up here. So that one day they would all go to a place, sit in comfortable chairs, in climate control environment, and they would just watch. And it's gonna be awesome. It's never, ever been the church, and it's still not. I've already talked about John, Pastor John earlier. I'll tell you, when I moved here 5 years ago, I was trying to figure out who the players are. And by players, I mean people that are going all in. And so I'm meeting everyone I can, shaking hands, saying, hey, tell me your story, you're a believer, how did that happen? And if I met a disciple of Jesus Christ, it seemed to me like they went to Antioch. I mean, it was just like the stories that were coming from, it was like, hey man, so, how does, I planted a couple churches. I lived in Spain for 3 years. I mean, everybody there lived somewhere else for a long time. It was like, to be a member here, you have to go and be a missionary somewhere. I'm like, I don't know if that's true, but it seemed like it to me. I'm like, that's a really high bar. We're like, hey, would you just come to this class for 2 hours? And people are like, can I watch from home? Do you have it recorded? I'm telling you, man, I am so burdened by this. The church is not a hobby, it's a platoon, it's an assembly of soldiers. Right? There can't be any gifts on the bench here. I think the 3 biggest mistakes that you will make with gifts is not appreciating the gifts of others. So you have an overappreciation for your own gifts so that you're not unified because anybody not like you can't get along with. I think coveting others' gifts, thinking, why did I just get this when I really want that? I want more of those opportunities. And then just simply put, not using your gifts. I went to a restaurant, and there's right in the middle of the restaurant was a bunch of LSU fans. Now, I mean, these are like all-in fans. I don't know, I know Baylor country, it's odd, but they found each other somehow, I'm sure through the internet, and they synced up a gathering there right in the middle of that restaurant, and they were loud, rowdy, and proud, and they were dressed in purple and gold, and they had their jerseys on, and they're watching the game, and it is the crew. They are dressed like the players, they got the players' gear on, but they're not the players. They're just fans. They look like the players. They're dressed like the players. They know the players. They know the plays. They know the coach. But they're just fans. And I'm like, may we never be just a fan. May we never be just fans, like here, just, cheering, the cheering section for Jesus or a particular communicator or a worship leader, right? I think, what would it look like today if we separated everyone here and we said, all right, we're gonna meet with you, we're gonna ask you some questions, and we're gonna determine if you're a player or if you're a fan, if you're in the game or you're just watching from the stands. And where would you be? Which category are you in? And I'm telling you, one of those categories, it is inconsistent with the church. It's not the church. It's why did Paul write this letter? So that we would read it a couple thousand years later and understand that that's not the church. I think one of the things that keeps us from going all in is we're like, man, I just don't feel equipped. I hear that all the time, like, man, life groups just aren't equipped. That's your shepherding model, but we don't have the tools. Would you learn the tools? If you don't have the tools, we'll buy you one. Okay, but if we buy you one and it just collects dust on the nightstand or in the drawer, you're still not gonna have the tools. Okay? When I became a pastor 3 weeks in, so I'm now pastor, licensed with the state of Texas, 3 weeks in, it's 12:30 at night or 12:30 in the morning, I'm being held hostage on the phone by somebody wanting to take their life. Saying, hey, you can't get off the phone with me. And I'm like, man, nobody trained me for this moment. It feels like life or death. What do I do? They don't teach you this stuff in seminary. There's no class that's like, hey, if in the middle of the night, here's what you do if somebody called, right? You don't have that. And I know you're probably like, how do you know you didn't go to seminary? Because as soon as I got off that phone call, I called all my friends who went to seminary. And I'm like, hey, what do you do in this situation? They're like, I don't know. How am I supposed to know? I'm like, they don't teach you that stuff in seminary? Like, no. You want to know who the Old Testament prophets? I got you, right? You want to know who wrote Exodus? I'm your guy, right? Kind of, but I don't know what to do in that situation. So how do you get equipped to go through that situation? You go through that situation. You talk to people who've been in that situation. You figure out, hey, what worked and didn't work, and all of a sudden you're being trained up as a minister. I'll give you another example. When I went through therapy, I met with a therapist. I'm nervous because I'm there, and I'm like, man, you just feel like something's wrong with you just walking into that place. I'm like, I'm broken. What's wrong with me? He looks like a therapist. I mean, he's got like the Einstein hair and the little glasses. I'm like, this is not helping, man. Everything about this situation screams something's broken with me. And he begins to tell me, I'm trained in cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's a renewing of your mind. And here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna train you in it. And when you leave here, you're going to be an expert in it. And I love that he's talking about leaving here. Like, because some doctors will wanna keep you there and continue to charge you. He's like, no, you're gonna graduate from this program and you're gonna go out there and you're gonna have the tools that I have so that you can help people in the same way that I'm about to help you. And I'll tell you, I didn't believe it in the moment, but man, have I leaned on that training so many times since then. It's what happened, it's what he did. I'm gonna say one more thing here. It's gonna feel really self-serving. Give me some grace on this, okay? It's kind of messy in my head and in my heart. I'm kind of surprised by how often we, the church, have to go the commercial route. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like, hey, you need something fixed. Well, Google, go in the yellow pages, right? I'm like, man, that's weird because there's like 3,000 people here every Sunday. It seems like somebody there would be able to fix it. It's like you need somewhere to stay in whatever city. It's just weird. It just seems like we could do a better job of that. Now here's why I don't think that's self-serving. Here's why I don't think that's self-serving. So if you feel in your heart like, wow, that is really self-serving, here's why I don't think it is. Because when we spend money, it's not my money. It's not like it comes out of my salary. It's your money, right? We're spending your money, your resources. And I'm just saying, hey, I think we can do better at leveraging the relationships that we have who are the church. Church is not somewhere you go. It is something you are. That's why I start every message. How we doing, church? I'm not talking to the walls. I'm not talking to the roof. I'm not talking to stage line, 401 stage line. I'm not talking to the 501c3. I'm talking to the people. How we doing, church? If you're ever like, well, nuh-uh. That just means you're on the bench. Well, here's what we're doing. I bumped into my friend Dave in the lobby this week. I'm like, what are you doing up here? He's like, oh, I'm building this fence out there around the baptistry equipment. I'm like, that's awesome. He goes, hey, do you have time for a quick story? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. He goes, man, I went over to the lumber yard, was getting the lumber. So he's like, hey, what do you need this for? I'm like, I'm building this fence around Harris Creek. He's like, that's where I go to church. He's like, that's awesome. That's the church I am. Oh, man, that's awesome. High five. He's like, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get it delivered there. He goes, oh, man, I'll deliver it. He goes, y'all deliver? He goes, we will in this case, right? Because I'm that church, right? Oh, and by the way, let's discount that in this way, right? And it's not, I know that sounds like a distraction, but again, it's your money. It's your money, right? That's the church leveraging what's available to them so that the church can be the church. And it's beautiful when it happens. A mature Christian's deployed gifts leads to a unified church. A mature Christian's deployed gifts leads to a unified church. Verse 14, then we will no longer be infants. We've grown, we've become mature. We're not an infant. We're not a 22-year-old, 1-year-old Christian. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people and their deceitful scheming. Can I just say this, man? you are unbelievably brainwashable. Everyone is. You got to be careful to the loops that you get in, because the cunning and craftiness of teachers, they will take you down some roads. You got to be careful who your teacher is, because you hear the same thing over and over and over, you will believe it. All right? You're scrolling through TikTok. All of a sudden you're like, all right, Princess Kate and P. Diddy are on some island and it's all over and Illuminati and I can't believe it. Now we need to build a bunker and buy some MREs. Because it's all over right now. You know, I'm telling you, God made us that way. Let me say this. You're like, why does that matter? Because God made us that way. So that every morning we would be brainwashed. I'm saying in air quotes if you're just listening. We would be brainwashed by the word of God. That we would not conform any longer by the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind, that we would set our mind on the things above. These are the scriptures that says over that if you don't anchor yourself to the word of God, the truths of God, in your relationship with God, you're gonna go the way of culture. You're gonna get swept up in the current, and you're gonna become really, really weird and sinful. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every aspect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. This is the graphic of the series. That you, all of you, that you're a ligament, that you're a strand of muscle, that you're coming together to make up the body of Christ. He's the head, he's the brain. He directs the body, but we're the hands and the feet. We go wherever he wants us to go so that we would meet the needs that are in front of us there. This is the picture of the church. And so if a ligament, right, is just sitting in the pew or in the chair, just consuming, but it's never exercised, it's not doing the things that the mind says. It does the things that are good for it, but it doesn't do the things that the mind says. I want you to go here and share there, and I want you to grab a shovel there, and I want you to do these things in my name. I want you to do this work, the good works which God prepared in advance for you to do. But what happens when you don't use a muscle? It atrophies. And you're like, why do I just feel so apathetic? Why does God feel so far? Why don't I feel those things? Why am I not stirred in this way? Well, it's easy. It's not confusing. It's A plus B kind of stuff because you're on the bench. That's why. It's that simple. And you can't look around and be like, well, they'll carry it. Well, they'll do it. There's some rock stars here. Okay, who's the GOAT in the NBA? Right now. I'm not trying to get in some crazy debate. Who's the best player in the NBA right now? It's one person, so it's not time to be like, it's Steph Curry. No, it's not. Who's the best player in the NBA? It's LeBron James. He's the best player in the NBA. There, it's been decided, now you know. Okay, he's the best. All right? So that means that the Lakers are the best team, right? How? They've got clearly and obviously the best player. How are they not the best team? Because that's not how it works, and everybody knows that. Everybody has to do their part. Everybody has to go in. There's some LeBron James here. I mean, they are here. Ron Joyner, that guy, he's dunking over everybody. I mean, he served hot dogs at Easter. He served hot dogs at the solar eclipse. Okay, he's out there parking cars right now. I mean, every Sunday, LeBron. You just hear this if you need to hear it and don't hear it if you don't. He's carrying your weight. He's carrying you. Verse 3, or third point rather. A mature Christian's development. A mature Christian's development. This is goals right there at the end. As each part does its work. I mean, there it is. Boom, done. As each part does its work, okay? As each part does its work. We can't be this out of sync Christian. We can't be like the guy in the gym who only does arms and chests and he's got popsicle sticks for legs, he's completely out of balance. Can't be that kind of church. Like we can't have a great marriage ministry but a terrible student ministry. We can't have an amazing kids ministry, but a really struggling recovery ministry. No, everybody has to jump into their area of ministry that they're called to do the work that God has for them to do there so that we as a body can be strong. How are we strong? You're strong. All you can do is focus on what has God called me to do, but if in this entire message you're like, I don't know what God has called me to do. I thought he just called me to show up and be there on time. That's not church. How are we going to get strong? Speaking the truth in love to each other and having others speak the truth in love to us. So you can't just watch your brothers and sisters make destructive decisions and go about their destructive ways, like or just sit on the bench. Like you may need to elbow somebody and say, hey, you ready to get in the game? You ready to get in the game today? Because that's the only way. You speak the truth and you do it in a loving way. You speak the truth and your motive must be love. The reason I'm speaking this to you is because I'm motivated and inspired to love you in this way, because I don't want you to be a 22-year-old Christian who's been a 1-year-old Christian 22 times. I want you to grow strong in the faith. Bruce Wilkerson, football player of the past, asked how American football impacted fitness in America. He goes, it hasn't. It hasn't. He said, there are 22,000 fans in desperate need of exercise watching 22 players in desperate need of rest. And then he goes on to say, this also describes the American church. It's never been the biblical church. A mature Christian's development leads to a unified church. In summary, a mature Christian's disposition of humility, gentleness, and patience leads to a unified church. A mature Christian's deployed gifts leads to a unified church. And a mature Christian's development leads to a unified church. Had to, after I served that coffee, I had to go back into that grinder, disassemble the grinder, and brush everything off because, my friend who's in the know, when it comes to coffee, has said, hey, you have one bad bean, it'll corrupt the entire batch. And that stayed with me. I remember I kind of went through this coffee tasting thing at Pinewood here, and they said that. They're like, hey, just one bad bean in there can change the taste and everything of the entire batch of coffee. And as I think about us, we're only going to be as strong as the church is being built up. We're only going to be as strong as the weakest muscle, the weakest ligament. Now, there's going to be times and seasons where you raise your hand and you say, I'm weak right now. I just had a baby. I'm going through some things. Hey, marriage is struggling in this way. We just got that cancer diagnosis. This just happened. And here's the deal. We're all going to come around you like a bunch of antibodies. We're going to circle you up and we're going to say, hey, I got Monday dinner. I got Tuesday dinner. I got Wednesday dinner. I'm going to take the kids. I'll take the dog. Hey, I got you. It's the body of Christ. It's the beauty. No one here is ever going to go hungry, ever. No one here is ever going to be on the street as long as one of us has an empty bedroom. No one here is ever going to be on the street. We're going to meet the needs of each other. It's what we do. But the whole point of this passage, and I don't know if you've seen it, is the real, true test of maturity is unity. And you've seen some churches who've been around for 100 years or 50 years, and all of a sudden they split over the sound of music or the volume rather of music or the chairs or the paint colors on the wall. And I'm just telling you, we're not going to be that church. Okay, you can have an opinion. We'll talk through it. No one's ever expressed an opinion to me that I didn't listen to ever, not one time so far. Right? And so we care about your opinion, but if you hold your opinion this tight and all of a sudden you're alone and you're on an island and you just can't play well in the sandbox, we're going to come around you and speak the truth in love because we're part of a 145-year-old tradition, and it can end on our watch over something really silly. And things are heating up in our country right now. Things are heating up in our world right now. And there's never been a time that you've been alive that the world around you has needed the church as much as they do right now. And the way that you need to interpret that is they need you in the game as much as they do right now. A weak church will be the end of our country. What is a weak church? People showing up to watch and listen. If you think, hey, that's me, then you're a part of the weak church. You're a contributor. You're going the wrong way. Okay? You got to think, all right, how do I grow in my faith right now? How do I be a strong ligament? How do I be a contender? How do I make sure I'm in the game? This is age agnostic. I don't care if you're in high school right now listening to this. If you're in college, you're the engine of the church. If you're 75, let's go. It's game time. Okay, let me pray for us. I'm just going to give you a minute to pray. Just ask the Lord. You self-identify before God. Am I in the game or am I on the bench? Am I a fan or am I a player? Is there a season of my life where I've been more in the game than right now? Am I growing stronger? Am I spiritually stronger in 2024 than I was 2000? 99? 2022? Going the right way? Talk to God. I mean, some of you, you're so on the bench. This moment right now, it's like you can't even talk to. You're thinking about your neighbor. You're so distracted by other things. You just realize, oh, he wants me to pray. Yes, I want you to pray and ask the Lord, how are you doing? Say, search me, oh God. You know me. You know my anxious ways. You know when I sit and when I stand. Wake up from that daydream right now and talk to God. Is he talking to me? Yes, I'm talking to you. Talk to God. Talk to God.